the brands who treat incrementality like purely as the report card are having a lot less fun. They're driving like a lot less impact, honestly, on the business.
Well, hello and welcome to another edition of the E-commerce Evolution podcast. I'm your host, Brett Curry, CEO of OMG Commerce. And today I'm super excited to welcome to the podcast the one, the only, Olivia Kory. She is the CSO of Haus Analytics, and she's really everyone's favorite incrementality expert. And you may be like, wait, people have a favorite incrementality expert. And I'm here to say, yes, they do. And it's almost always Olivia Kory. And so can't wait to dive into this discussion on all things incrementality. And so with that, Olivia, welcome to the show. And how's it going?
Thank you, Brett. It's going well, other than have some sort of virus that my kids gave to me, but a little bit under the weather. Otherwise, great. We were talking before we started recording that you do these events that I hear amazing things about, and I hear that you pop up on the screen my podcast with Andrew Ferris, and yes. I owe you a huge thank you for all of the publicity that you have given to the Haus study and the Haus YouTube data over the years, because I think we really owe you one for getting it out there.
Totally. Yeah, I'm a huge YouTube fan. I'm really just a huge fan of marketing that works. That's kind of always been my thing, but love YouTube. This study that you guys did, the 190 incrementality tests across 74 brands, I reference it weekly at least. Anytime I'm on stage, I talk about it. So I put your mug on the screen a lot and my buddy Andrew Ferris. And so I've probably sent some customers your way, helped grow his podcast, but that's fun. So I enjoy doing that for sure.
You know what's funny is that I feel like vendors tend to hate on Meta and Google a lot. And I always wonder why, because I'm like, I just like advertising that works. And we know that Google works. So why are you going to target? It's because they're big tech, of course. And it's like really easy to dislike them. But like, hey, there are not a lot of great places to spend your ad dollars. And so I like to lean into the platforms that I know are going to drive returns.
Absolutely. Lean into what's working for sure. So lots of things I want to talk about related to this topic. First, though, your background, Olivia, I think is really interesting. So you're former Netflix, former Sonos, and that kind of led you to Haus. So give us kind of the brief version of that. What'd you do prior to this, and how did it lead you to the world of incrementality?
Yep. So actually started off agency side. So I've done a little bit of everything over the years, but started off agency side. That's where I met my now husband. So I thank Starcom and the very kind of large ad agency in Chicago for bringing us together. And then I got into ad tech. I was at a DSP, a programmatic video DSP called TubeMogul. And that was like just as kind of programmatic media was blowing up in 2013, 14. And that experience is what got me the job at Netflix. Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix at the time, was like very passionate about biddable programmatic advertising because he wanted the marketing to work more like the product. Or like if you think about the Netflix product, highly algorithmic, personalized, no two people see the same kind of experience. He wanted to take and apply a lot of those principles to the marketing. And so I just kind of like lucked into my dream job because I had that experience that he was looking for. And at Netflix, I got just like MBA in incrementality. I was surrounded by the smartest people in the world, truly, when it comes to incrementality testing. And we were running these experiments all over the world. We had a very clear understanding of what marketing was contributing to the business in this world of Netflix, where it was like tons of organic demand, tons of noise, really hard to parse out what paid was delivering on top of all of that. And the way we were able to do it, there's like no secret sauce here. It was just that we had a very large team dedicated to helping us figure that out. And so that's like really where the Haus story begins, because Zach, our founder, his insight was like, what if we could enable access to like that level of scientific rigor, quality incrementality testing, but instead of having to hire a huge team, let's do it as SaaS for, less than the cost of a head count. And fortunately, he founded the company in 2021, but fortunately over the past few years, like incrementality has kind of become widely accepted as the gold standard. So we've had some tailwinds that we've benefited from. But after Netflix, just to kind of complete the story, I moved on to, I had a couple roles. I went over to Quibi for a little, and then I settled in as head of growth at Sonos. And I was actually one of Haus's first customers, helping Zach and team build the early MVP. And it was just going so well at Sonos in like such a short amount of time that I had to make the leap over. So I joke that I'm a vendor now. I don't know how I got here, but I'm really like a growth marketer at heart. And yeah, that's my story.
It's so valuable though, as a, being a growth marketer at heart, because you can help lead strategy because that's what the tool is built for. It's who it's built for. And so it's super valuable. I am curious. So your husband, you met him at an ad agency. You guys are both nerds, I'm sure. Do you talk about this stuff at the dinner table? Is it like off limits to talk about, marketing stuff at the table? Like what do you guys geek out about together?
Do you want to hear something crazy? It's going to be a bomb.
I would love
I don't
to.
know if I have. I think I can't remember if I've ever said this publicly, but my husband actually works at Google. So
no way.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Yeah. He's been there for like 10 years. I actually texted him this morning because I wanted to get an updated stat on how much YouTube delivery happens on TV screens. But he hasn't responded yet.
It's like north of 50%, right?
Yeah, I wanted like the exact number before we talked. But we met at the agency, and then he moved over to Google. And it's funny because depending on the day, I feel like I'm either like Google's best friend or worst enemy. And so that's been fun. But recently I think we've gotten into a really good rhythm with Google, and it's going really well. And so our paths cross sometimes in a very nice way.
That's awesome. So what's interesting to me, like, incrementality has kind of become the buzzword, the thing that's talked about the most. You talked about some serious tailwinds that are benefiting Haus. A lot of our brands we work with, high 8, 9-figure brands, they're all either using it, considering it, talking about it right now. But I am reminded that not everybody understands incrementality, right? I was speaking at an event in Miami a little over a month ago, and it was like 7 and 8-figure brands, really, really smart, active group. And I asked for a show, like 120 people in the audience, I asked for a show of hands, how many of you have heard of incrementality? And it was like a handful. It was like 5 people, legitimately 5 people. Then I did the event in LA at the Google YouTube offices, and that's, co-branded event we do with Google and with Raindrop. And of course, everybody there has heard of Haus and incrementality and are probably using it. But you've been around this a long time. In your own words, what is incrementality, and maybe what isn't it, so that we can kind of frame this and set that frame for the rest of the show?
Yep. It's really funny. I was in Toronto at an event, and I gave my incrementality speech, and I realized I got like way too deep, way too fast. And I had to rewind far to really meet the audience where they were. And so, it's easy for me, who's like talking about it all day, every day, to just like quickly go down that rabbit hole. But to try to like zoom out and talk about it, maybe the way I would describe it to someone who's not in the industry is, the analogy I like to give is like randomized controlled trials in healthcare. I think a lot of marketing data is based on correlation. You saw this ad and then you signed up for this service, or you bought this thing. And we at Haus kind of fundamentally believe that in order to establish causation, like true cause and effect, this advertising caused this outcome, that you need an experiment with a holdout group. And the holdout group is, you actually turn off advertising in part of the country. We do this based on Geo. And you see the difference between the control and the treatment. And that enables you to say like, hey, this effect would not have happened without the marketing. Right. And so in that way, that's why I say it's analogous to like randomized control trials in healthcare, where you're giving some group of people the placebo and some group of people the drug. And so that is at its core, when you think about incrementality, it's that counterfactual to understand what would have happened anyway in the absence of marketing.
Right. Yeah. It's so good. And it's one of those things where, I think as we progress and get smarter as marketers, and as there's more tech powering what we do, there's just been multiple points when I know I have thought, oh, well, this is it. This is the solution, right? MTAs come onto the scene and we're like, now we can see all the data together and we'll finally know what's driving the impact. But then you realize, well, really every tool that's really click-based or leans on click is biased and it's going to have flaws. And really every piece of measurement is kind of some level of wrong. Maybe it's still useful, but it's not complete. And really the only way to tell what would have happened without this advertising, or did this advertising cause this result, is to do a holdout. And so, I love it. And I think more and more people are seeing, yes, I need this as part of my measurement stack. And so, cool. So let's talk about, and I'm going to kind of bounce around to a variety of topics. But when should someone consider using an incrementality tool like Haus, or there are other tools, but like when should someone say, okay, I've got my MTA, I've got some other tools potentially. When do I need incrementality?
Yep. I was just talking to a brand about this on a call right before, and there's kind of an interesting dynamic happening with some of these like new AI companies, which I'll talk about. But let's talk about e-commerce businesses just as the example here. When you're just starting out, and you're just starting your business, like you don't have a lot of organic demand. Like nobody knows who you are. You don't have any awareness. And you're building this business on Meta, and that's most likely how people know about you and how they're purchasing. And thus, in that way, it's pretty clear like what's driving your business. And the click-based attribution there is like probably a nice proxy for what's happening. And then you start growing, and I don't know exactly. I tend to see it around like low to mid 8 figures in revenue, where that's where you start expanding channels into Google, into YouTube, into TikTok. So you're expanding into channels. You might be expanding your sales distribution into Amazon and into retail. And you are growing organically. Like the word of mouth is starting to take off. Maybe you're partnering with other companies, and they're doing co-marketing with you. That's where it's like, at that point, your ad channels are going to start taking credit for like a whole bunch of growth that's happening elsewhere. And the classic example there is like, you might be spending in all these channels, and all of that impact is showing up as search in the click-based attribution model, because that is like the last place someone goes before they end up buying. And so again, like when is the right time? I tend to just ask brands I'm talking to, like how much of your business is driven by paid? Do you feel like you have a good signal there? And like, can you just turn off marketing and easily get that answer? Or is like your business so complex and it's so fuzzy that you don't actually think you could get that answer by like a simple on-off test? And that is when you need incrementality. And like, you can think about a Sonos. Like if we shut down marketing at Sonos, like the business is so big and there's so much noise that like it would be really hard to get a clean signal on the top line.
Yeah.
And so that's typically when I'd say folks feel ready. It's like multiple channels. They've expanded into multiple sales channels in terms of Amazon retail, and they're unclear on whether ads are kind of taking credit for what would have been an organic conversion. I just had an interesting conversation with an AI company. They're doing 100 million or more in ARR. They grew entirely organically. Viral AI product. It's like a B2B AI video generator. It's the inverse. Like they haven't had any paid. And so I was like, oh wow, this is like, you guys are going to need incrementality off the bat here, because you have grown so quickly and you've become so viral organically that they're going to need incrementality right away. They're like a year-old company, and they're signing up with us because they just launched with so much momentum. So I don't see that a lot, but really exciting. And like the baseball lifestyle 101 guys, I think are probably an example of that, where they they grew first organically, and thus anything they do in paid is going to need incrementality.
Totally. Yeah. Helping them with that right now on the YouTube side. And it's such a cool brand. They were community first. the kind of slow built for a couple of years and then just took off like a rocket. And so, yeah, incrementality is I think critical once you get to those stages, just absolutely critical. And so, let's think about this. Sometimes when we talk to brands, they're thinking like, okay, when do we need to look at incrementality like we just talked about? And okay, if I do, then what should I start with? What's your point of view on, Google has what they call conversion lift studies. So they'll do actually a user holdout, which we can talk about the benefits of Geo Holdout versus user holdout in a minute. That'd be a fun topic. But they'll do some incrementality studies. Meta, I know, will run incrementality studies on your behalf. What's your point of view on those? And are those like a good way for brands to dip their toe in the water and get some incremental reads?
Yep. I'm a big fan of the native conversion lift products. I know, again, that's not a popular opinion when you're an independent kind of third party, but I think they're incredibly useful. I think, one, it gets you comfortable with the terminology, the nomenclature of like, what is an iROAS? How is it calculated? How is that different from your in-platform ROAS? And it also prepares you for what you might see when you start running more of these tests in terms of, perhaps the incremental return is not what you thought, it's lower, and it gets the organization comfortable with this idea that this is a new metric and we're setting new baselines. So I like it in terms of, okay, let's get used to the terminology. Let's try to, establish some set of baselines. Meta's conversion lift product is, I think, kind of widely accepted as like, all right, it has the rubber stamp of approval. I don't hear much about Google's, and I do wonder if there's like a signal loss thing happening. Like I know Meta's CAPI product is solid. There might be an issue with like being able to track iOS inside of Google, and maybe their like enhanced conversions products not being as robust as CAPI. I don't know. I just don't hear about it as much. So these are all hypotheses for like why I hear about Google's product. I also think maybe it's not like universally available to all advertisers. Like the way Meta's is kind of just like
it's not. It's not. Yep. You've got to get.
That's probably why.
Get allow listed and stuff like that. It's going to roll out more, but it's not just available in the platform.
Yep. So
right now,
your guess is as good as mine there. The issue with user level is signal loss, right? Like you're still relying on being able to match a user who was exposed to an ad to a sale that happened down the line. And you just, this with just like iOS 14.5, it's so many people who have opted out of tracking that they're modeling. Like Google and Meta are both doing modeling, and I'm sure it's working well, but it is certainly not perfect. And so signal loss over the past few years has like really, really challenged those user level products. And then the other issue is like every platform is kind of doing it a different way. And so you then no longer have like the standardized cross-channel comparable methodology where you can...
Yeah, I can't compare your iROAS in Google to your iROAS in Meta because they're maybe measuring it differently.
Yeah. So, but like all things equal, if the signal loss wasn't such a big problem and they were all doing it the same way, user level testing is better, just like objectively in terms of precision. But there's just, again, with privacy and whatnot, like it's just that the signal is too unreliable to really have faith in. So that's why we focus on Geo at Haus. We were kind of like born out of the ashes of iOS 14.5 in 2021. And so when everybody was trying to like stitch together these user graphs and like use these alternate IDs, we just skated in the total opposite direction. We're like, hey, we don't want any pixels. Don't give us any PII. We're just going to look at the aggregate sales in these regions versus some other set of regions. And that's what's enabled us to like move really quickly through like security reviews with our customers. Is we don't look at any of that PII in our analyses. And so privacy durable. And then the other kind of like really good property with geo testing is you do it in the same way across every channel. And that's really helped our customers feel confident, like making reallocation decisions because they're evaluating them all on a level playing field.
It's the same math, it's the same methodology. So comparing Google to Meta to TikTok to AppLovin, it's the same measurement applied to everybody. I really like that. So walk through a couple of things. Walk through like, how do we set up a Geo holdout test? What is this usually looking like? So I come to Haus and I say, hey, I want to run an incrementality study on YouTube for this brand. How are you structuring that Geo holdout?
Yep. So end to end, I'll start from the very beginning. This might get boring. I hope your listeners are excited about some of the technical details, but
I think they are, or they're heavily caffeinated, but people nerd out here. So I think we're good.
Okay. So we start with data ingestion. So we take the customer, if they're on Shopify, really easy, simple plugin. But otherwise, if your sales data is in Snowflake or, GCP or Redshift, we ingest sales by day by geo, or like whatever the customer cares about in terms of KPI, like new customers, subscription starts, for like mobile apps, sometimes they'll pass us like, player value. And so whatever kind of the customer cares about, we're flexible. They set up that data ingestion, and then we can basically configure their instance of the app. And then they can log into their app, and based on their own historical data, we can configure an experiment across any channel, online, offline, YouTube in this example. We would set it up, and then basically our tool would tell you, how much you need to spend. Well, first, we want to understand your business question. Like, what is the incrementality of YouTube is like a different question than how much should I spend on YouTube? And so we'll recommend a cell structure and a test design to like best kind of answer the question
to answer the question you want to get answered. That's going to inform how you design the test.
Yep. And then we do basically all the data science work to help you understand how much should I spend? How long do I need to run for? How large does my holdout group need to be to kind of like sufficiently power the test from a statistical standpoint? And then, we launch the test. And that just involves turning off YouTube in like some percent of the country. And we give you those regions. We do the market matching. And then because we're plugged into the data that I mentioned in terms of that data ingestion, we can start populating results pretty quickly once that test launches. And customers can kind of view how those results are changing as they come in day by day. And so that's like the tool part. Now we have like a pretty heavy services model that we attach to that to make sure like, all right, how do I interpret these results? What do I do next? How does this compare to other customers? And how do I really like operationalize this in a way where I'm decisioning on these results in a way that's going to improve business outcomes? And that's where like I think the tool alone is fantastic, but there's still a pretty high touch services model here to help you like really extract and maximize the most value you possibly can with like, what do I do with this result? Like, how do I how do I operationalize this? And how do I explain it to my leadership? Like, that's one of the most underrated parts of incrementality is like, picture this, like these companies have been handing leadership a Google Analytics report for decades. And now we're saying like, that Google Analytics report that we've been showing you, like maybe that number has been wrong. And so we coach our clients on like how to have that conversation in the most productive way and how to really like ease your leadership into this idea. And so that's like where the hard work happens, I would say.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And data is only as good as what you can action upon. Like the last thing any DTC brand or any brand needs is more data. Like we've got data everywhere around us. It's, can you give me some clear insight, like some insight into what's happening inside of my business, insight into my customer, and then help me do something. Like help me shift something. Either help me lean into a channel or lean out of a channel or switch creative or like something, but help me action towards it. And it's a really good call out where you say like, for leadership, a lot of times this is the first time they've seen an incrementality read, right? And so imagine the first time you saw Google Analytics, you probably had a million questions. You didn't really know what to do with it. And so I think a few things to maybe touch on is, how do you advise people? And I've got to talk to several of your strategists. They're awesome. They're smart marketers. They know the tool. They've been in the game a while, so super helpful.
Who's your favorite?
But the only name I can think of right now is Noah, and Noah's great. So shout out to Noah. That dude's a legend.
Noah is definitely a crowd favorite. So
yeah, great, articulate, smart dude. Doesn't mind if I pick on him. Like, good guy. So I like him. Hey, thanks again for tuning in to the E-commerce Evolution podcast. I want to take just a minute and talk about my agency, OMG Commerce. We've been helping e-commerce brands for 15 years, and that's like 100 e-commerce years. And our specialty is finding opportunities for growth that other people miss and unlocking channels that you're not currently maximizing. For example, YouTube. Most brands are sleeping on YouTube, and my belief is it's the biggest untapped opportunity for your brand. We're also good at adding up to 8 figures in growth for Amazon brands. And so if you're looking for scale and growth profitably, that's what we do. We'd love to chat with you. We'd love to review your current marketing efforts, show you where there's missed opportunities, and craft a specific plan for you. So visit us at omgcommerce.com, click the Let's Talk button, and we'd love to schedule a complimentary strategic review with you. With that, back to the show. What do you advise people? Like, probably the result they're going to get is going to be wildly different than they were thinking, right? So like, how do you help them? Because it's not like we should get one incrementality test and completely change our business, right? We want to make sure it's actionable, but just one test is one test. How do you kind of coach people like, hey, when you're doing your first test, here's what to expect or what to do, once you get that read?
Yep. So we've learned a lot into this as well of like, how long should you test for? Like a lot of these heuristics were kind of like updating as we have more information available to us. So like what we do is we really try to like make sure the test is set up for success. Like YouTube is an example. I think I have it in a slide somewhere. Like in the beginning, folks were running like 2-week YouTube tests, and we've just had like
it's too short.
Update. Yeah, like that. Now we've have enough data and we've seen enough tests to know like, okay, well, that's not going to be successful. So if you don't have time to run this for 4 to 6 weeks, then let's do it another time. So just like making sure we're using these best practices to set the test up for success out of the gates. Results come back. They're not where you wanted them to be. Let's go test some other channels. I'd say getting baselines on all of your channels is
getting a baseline. Is super helpful.
Important. And then the question is, all right, how do I improve upon this? That's where the fun begins. Like I think the brands who treat incrementality like purely as the report card are having a lot less fun, and they're driving a lot.
Just like pass or fail, right? It's like you get this report and you're like, I failed. I totally failed.
And they're driving like a lot less impact, honestly, on the business than these brands. Like you hear Connor from Ridge talking about how many tests that he ran.
Who's a legend.
They are constantly running a test, and like all he's trying to do is like make that meta number better. And like Cody just posted about this as well, where got a meta read, wasn't happy with it, made a bunch of changes, retested, saw a huge win, step change win after the improvements. And so that's where I'd say like the first kind of moment a customer will have is they'll get all their reads back, and like we might make some reallocation decisions of, all right, let's move budget from channel A to channel B based on what we're seeing. But then the next thing, and that's where we spend most of our time, is like, all right, how do we improve each of these channels, and how do we go in and kind of really kind of make some big swings? And so that's always my guidance is like, all right, why would you expect incrementality to be great out of the gates? First time you've optimized.
You've never done it. Yeah, exactly.
And so how do we make that number better? And those are the wins. Like we have this awesome success story of a brand they 4x'd their YouTube iROAS over the course of like a year. Good. And it's not easy. Again, it's like, this is not easy. There's no like simple, like just like switch you flip in YouTube to like make 4x incremental. But it's an always on channel right now for them. And it's like their number 2 channel. And it's definitely like worth investing in to unlock that. And StockX just spoke about this publicly, so I can talk about it. But the StockX team was barely spending in YouTube based on MTA. They ran some house tests, and now it's their number 2 channel. It's like one of their most acquisition channels. So that's where we try to take it is like, hey, this is the baseline upon which we will improve.
Yeah, let's get some baselines, and now let's continue to try to step up there. And one other interesting thing, you referenced Cody from Jones Road Beauty. I read his post today. It was an excellent post. But he also said that meta improvement they made, so they optimized to try to get more incremental with meta. The changes they made, actually, several of them looked worse in platform. So in platform and MTA, some of the numbers got worse, but the incrementality read improved, right? Because they were able to reach net new people. That's kind of what they were prioritizing, just to like really condense it. But they got more incremental. And so, yeah, it kind of becomes a game you can play too, right? Which is really fun for me. Like we've been a part of these conversations now with brand side, with the Haus team, with my team, thinking about, okay, why did this read turn out the way it did, either better or worse than we expected? And what do we do next? And it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
I think some of us are in denial about the in-platform is not a good
Right.
not a good proxy for incrementality, because like once you kind of accept that, it's just like then the concept of an incrementality factor becomes a little bit confusing, because if there's no correlation between the in-platform ROAS and incremental ROAS, then the factor it's
a little dicey, right? Like how do you how do you apply that with any confidence? Which actually, let's do this. So let's define a couple of things that we haven't defined yet, which I think will be really helpful. So iROAS, an incrementality factor, CPIA, another one. So what are those? And then, how are we using those in our business practically?
Yeah. So the audience probably knows CPA and ROAS. This is what you see in the ad platforms in terms of KPI, success criteria, cost per acquisition, or incremental return on ads, return on ad spend, not with the I. When you add the I into these acronyms, you are basically throwing away all of the conversions that would have happened anyway. So you're saying the translation from the CPA to the CPIA is, okay, now I'm throwing away everything that wasn't a direct result of this advertising. And in some cases, like YouTube, it actually gets bigger, because you're saying, I'm pulling in a bunch of conversions that I didn't actually attribute to YouTube that were showing up elsewhere in terms of channel attributions.
All my click conversion measurement tools in platform and MTA hated YouTube, but incrementality generally likes YouTube.
Yeah. So you're basically just you're moving from attributed conversions to incremental conversions, and you are recalculating those metrics based on that. And now the factor is, of the conversions that the platform is reporting, what % of those are incremental? And so your factor can be below 1, it can be over 1, of course. But that's just the equation of, okay, of those, or like a Northbeam. Some people will do factors on an MTA or like a third-party tool. Of the conversions that Northbeam is reporting, what % of those are truly incremental? That's the factor.
Yeah. And so as a comparison, then, something that's not very incremental, which our friends at Google might not like us mentioning, but branded search, right? And there's a place for brand protection and things like that, brand defense, but branded search, not very incremental, is it? By and large. I know I talked to my friends at Simple Modern, had Brian on the podcast. I think he said branded search for them, they felt was like 5% incremental, right? So if a reporting tool, I think this was on Amazon and on Google, showed that it drove 100 conversions, it probably actually only drove 5, right? Like 95 of those would have happened anyway. It probably only actually drove 5 conversions, right? So then that incrementality factor would be 0.05, correct?
Yes.
For branded search.
Yep. 0.05.
Yeah.
And branded search is a fun one. We love to pick on it. But a couple of things with brand search, it might just be so cheap that like it makes
exactly
even if only 5% of it's incremental, it's so cheap that like the math works.
Yeah.
And then the other thing with branded search, we actually published some data on this. It's one of my favorite data pieces, so we can link to it. We've seen it be incremental more than I thought in terms of success rate. Like there are certainly cases where branded search can be incremental, and the number one case there is like when Amazon is bidding on your terms. And so there's this share shift phenomenon that's really annoying. It's like quite annoying that like you've got to pay the Google tax and the Amazon tax here. But when Amazon and some of these retailers are bidding on your terms, you like might want to incur that tax to take the margin back into D2C. So we've seen some interesting data here where it is not universal that branded search is always a failure.
Yeah, totally. And we almost always have branded search on for our clients. We just usually, I think the error is it's not as efficient as it should be, right? So again, Simple Modern's approach was, hey, if it's 5% incremental, then I'm willing to spend here as long as I'm getting a 20x return. So I'm going to bid for a 20x ROAS, right? And if I get that, I'll spend all day long. It's great. I think for other brands, maybe it's like a 10x ROAS or whatever. But if you're bidding too aggressively on branded search, you're probably just giving too much of your budget to YouTube or to Google at that point. And so, but I think there's still a lot of people that will just click on whatever ad they see first, or if someone's new to your brand and there's not any loyalty there, you probably want to show up. Also, a competitor might swoop in and grab it. So yeah, a case to be made there, but it's in comparison, the incrementality factor is way lower on branded search than other campaign types for sure.
And many Haus customers would say their biggest win was having the data and the evidence to feel confident turning off brand search and seeing like no negative impact to the business and just taking a bunch of money in terms of savings.
Right. Yep. I think that's smart in a lot of cases for sure. So let's talk about something else that I think you mentioned this a little bit, but I want to unpack it a little bit more. So if I'm running a YouTube test, it's got to be longer than 2 weeks, probably 4 weeks or longer. If I'm running a meta test, maybe it can be shorter. Non-brand search may be different. Describe treatment window, post-treatment window, and how you're structuring these for success.
Yep. And this is another area where as we learn, as we get more data, as we run more experiments, we're able to kind of like update our priors and just get smarter here. So in terms of test length, what we have our test window. This is where you kind of like turn off ads in part of the country. And that's when your test is running. And then we'll say, end the test, go back, revert back to national or turn it off. Let's end the test, but then let's just observe the behavior of these markets for some period of time to understand any lagging.
Still observe the control in the test area. So still observe those after the fact.
Yep. Yeah. We'll still observe those as distinct test cells.
Yep.
But we're just going to watch what's happening to understand any lagged effects. We call that a post-treatment window. The industry has started just using like PTW as the acronym, which I'm proud of, but like don't expect everybody to know that. So when we say PTW or post-treatment window, we're just talking about like test is over, but we're continuing to look at the treatment and the control and see how those sales are changing over time. And with YouTube, as an example, that's just one channel where like most of the impact is coming on the back half of that test window, the treatment window. We see this with CTV as well, and we have some data on the delayed effects of these more view-based channels. So that is just defining the terms. We have the treatment window, post-treatment window. I'd say with something like a YouTube, you also want to factor in the brand's consideration cycle. Like we were talking before we started recording about a furniture company that is selling high AOV, rugs and sofas. Like you have to factor in the consideration cycle. It's about the channel, but it's also about the brand and their purchase window. So we try to match those two things up as closely as we can. In terms of like the big infrequent purchases get longer tests. These more impulse purchases can be shorter. We try to ask the brand if they have any data on like time from exposure to purchase based on post-purchase windows or post-purchase surveys rather. So any data we can get here to help us design the right test is helpful. But for a view-based channel like YouTube, I mean, we're typically running like 6 to 8 week studies. And we're seeing a lot of that lift come on the back half of that test. And it's tough because, one of my strategists and I talk about this all the time, like the way a finance team is forecasting and the way that this business is running, you're not really modeling like spend today on March 5th. You're not really modeling out that spend returning on like June 5th.
Right. So it's not easy to do. It feels very risky to do that.
Yeah. So we're working with a lot of these teams to like kind of rebuild the marketing model because these channels have very different payback windows.
Yeah. It's a really good point. Yeah. Every product life cycle is a little bit different. I'm really glad you mentioned post-purchase surveys as well. I was talking to like a disaster preparedness company recently. They sell like generators and stuff like that. And they were saying, if you look at like their path to purchase reports, like how long after clicking or seeing an ad does it take someone to purchase? Almost all of those are going to still say within a few days or a few weeks or whatever. But they did their post-purchase survey and said, hey, when did you first hear about us? And it was like 50% of the respondents were longer than 3 months. Like, and a lot of them were a year. And I've even seen reports like for true classic teas where that's kind of the thing. And so probably whatever path to purchase report you're looking at is shorter than what's actually happening. Yep. And so you do have to keep that in mind whenever you're running an incrementality test. And especially for those channels like Meta for prospecting and YouTube and connected TV where you're reaching someone really early in the process, it's going to take time, right? Like for home furnishing, you're probably going to have to discuss that with your spouse or, there's probably going to be a little bit of shopping there to see, hey, am I going to actually buy this sofa or this rug? And so you got to keep all those in mind.
Yep. And the other thing, just a big thing with a channel like that's more view-based is if you are selling on Amazon, if you're selling in retail and you're not pulling those sales in, it's going to look like YouTube can't work.
Right.
And it's because people are going to buy where they want to buy. Like they're not clicking. So clearly you're not able to guide them to your store. So they're going to go buy where they want to buy. And that's likely going to be in Amazon or in retail. And so if you're not pulling those sales in, you're probably understating the effects of that media.
Yeah, so talk about that a little bit, and we'll actually reference. I've referenced on the podcast a few times, so we don't need to fully unpack it. But like the YouTube study you did, like what were some of the findings there in terms of how incremental was it, and then the difference between D2C and Amazon and retail, kind of tie those together, and then would love to kind of compare that to Meta or CTV for any numbers you have kind of top of mind.
Yeah, man, we've done so many Meta reports since I'm using Meta in the other sense right now, not the ad channel Meta, but we've done so many reports. I have to dust off. I have to dust off the YouTube data. High level summary. Do you want me to?
High level's great. Yep, high level's awesome. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the big headline coming out of the YouTube report. This is now almost a year old, so I think we're due for a refresh. I think.
Yeah, you guys got to reboot
you
this.
Should refresh
Absolutely.
it for your content and your stuff.
Yeah.
But the big bombshell was that YouTube, the incrementality factor that we discussed of based on what the platform is reporting, what percentage is incremental, was actually 3.42x. So that means if you thought you were getting a 1 in terms of ROAS on YouTube, it's more like 3.4. And that completely kind of changes the calculus on whether you decide
totally changes
channel.
It. Yeah.
So that was huge. And then the halo effects across physical retail and Amazon basically added doubled the lift. So you were seeing a 1 in terms of ROAS on D2C. When we pulled in Amazon and retail, that 1 turned into a 2. So basically assume that you're underreporting by 100%. And then the last, I'd say we talked about this, but most of the effects were actually happening in the second half of the experiment and into the post-treatment window. So if you're running a 2-week test and you think you get your results back, and you think it's a loser, you're
going to hate them. Yeah,
you're going to turn it off,
2 weeks
for sure. So those are there's also some insights around DemandGen. I think at the time we published that data, DemandGen was very unpopular. People didn't like that Google was moving people over from video action.
Totally.
DemandGen ended up being looking really good in our data, and I think it continues to look good. So I think maybe we owe Google an apology for being upset about
it. Yeah, for sure. And what's interesting is, we noticed this actually before I even knew about true incrementality studies. We had a hair regrowth client, and we got them from $0 to $1 million a month in spend on YouTube. And over time, they had a data scientist team, a couple of wicked smart guys. And so I remember one day they came to me and they said, hey, so these numbers look pretty good, but we believe that for every one sale we're getting D2C, we're actually getting 2 on Amazon. And we were actually helping them on Amazon, so we were kind of able to help cross-reference that. But yeah, just a reminder that like people buy where they want to buy, and especially for view-based campaigns, you've got to look everywhere, and that's what you guys do. If you're not, then you're missing a good chunk of the results for sure. So, and then how does that compare to Meta? Because I know Meta maybe is a little more mid-funnel, so you can structure the test a little bit differently. Post-treatment window can look a little bit different. How are you approaching Meta?
Yep. And this is what when I mentioned like having to rebuild the marketing model to kind of model out a channel paying back over a longer kind of time horizon. Meta's the opposite. And that's why people love Meta so much, is it's really easy in that model because it's quick. It is a very immediate impact. But we actually see like that can hurt incrementality often, because when you're looking for kind of like short-term outcome, you tend to over deliver to people who are really down funnel and already in market for your product. You have to be careful. Like Cody and I talk, I'm referencing Cody from Jones Road, but we nerd out about this all the time. We talk about how like maybe Meta's conversion optimization is too good. And that's appreciate about a YouTube is like, it's prospecting. Like, you're introducing the brand to new audiences. You just know based on the nature of that channel. With Meta, you could get stuck in this like pocket that you can't seem to break out of. In terms of like, well, Meta's optimization model is like seeing a lot of opportunity here because these people are going to buy, but the problem is your ads aren't influencing them to buy. They were going to buy anyway, and you're just spending on them. And so that's the challenge. It's like the blessing and the curse of Meta of like, that system is so good at identifying intent, but sometimes it might be too good at identifying intent, and you have to be careful there. But like, we see pretty short-term impacts there. And we don't see as much of a halo on Amazon retail, and we don't see as much of a lagged impact either.
Interesting. So then you can, that shifts the way you do the treatment window, the post-treatment window, shifts your expectation, all of those things. Let's talk about some surprises. So now, you've gotten into, you work with a ton of brands. You guys have done these big studies. What have been some of the big surprises for you? Either things that are very incremental or things that are not incremental. What have you found?
YouTube wasn't surprising for me, but I know it was surprising for a lot of like I came in with we were spending as much on YouTube as we did on Meta at Netflix on the acquisition team. Like, we had proven that out time and time again. So none of what we've been seeing with YouTube lately has surprised me, but I know it has surprised many who've been evaluating it on MTV.
Especially in the D2C space, just was kind of a bombshell. Yeah.
So that one's been great. AppLovin, I came in super, super suspicious of AppLovin. You just think about the inventory itself and just the nature of like programmatic ad network.
Videos in mobile games seems kind of like, sometimes when you're running those ads on Google, you like avoid that placement.
You like uncheck that box. And we just, I think I, at least coming from ad tech, just have a lot of baggage and kind of trauma of like what I've seen on the open web when it comes to ad networks. And so I was skeptical. It's looking really good.
That's what I've heard across lots of clients. Very good.
I know that's an unpopular opinion with the short sellers, but data doesn't lie. And it's another channel where the impacts are short term, which, these performance marketers love and makes their lives easier when you can see that impact pretty quickly. On the other hand, so TV has been interesting. I think a lot of brands will come to us in this moment where they're Meta and Google and they're about to go diversify into YouTube and television. And almost all of them start with TV with one of these partners who does it's like a TV ad network. For all intents and purposes, it's like linear remnant cable inventory.
Right. Yeah.
Or CTV. And what I've seen there is like results can be really mixed. And the reason there is because you get what you pay for. So many people say like, oh, we're buying linear remnant cable because it's like $1 CPM or $2 CPM. And again, I'm here to say that will show up in the results. Like you get what you pay for in terms of quality. And so I think it's really interesting when folks are testing not just like these more like remnant-based TV buys, but they're also going direct to the source when it comes to, and like you see that with YouTube, like there's no intermediary here. You're buying YouTube on YouTube.
Right.
If you go I think there's just like a lot of interesting testing opportunities, and I've seen a lot of interesting results when you like go direct to the source, to Hulu, to Universal, and to these networks, and you just see what that looks like as compared to a more like kind of programmatic remnant buy. So I'm seeing just inventory type on television really swing the results quite a bit, where like I can't make generalizations the way I can with a YouTube.
Yeah, super interesting. So really the game here is we're creating baselines, we're understanding how incremental are different channels, right? And we're comparing them. And then we're saying, okay, how do we improve these? How do we improve these scores? Because if we do that, if we action on this data, we're going to get more and more incremental. We'll get more from our ad dollars month in and month out. And so what are some of the biggest levers to pull? So I've got my baseline numbers. Sure, I'm never going to be satisfied with the baseline, but maybe I get disappointing baseline numbers. What are the biggest levers we're pulling to get more incremental on our key channels?
Yep. So far and away, biggest lever you have is creative. That is where we see the most kind of like step change performance improvements, like 30, 40, 50% wins. So creative is your biggest lever. But I'd say there's a lot you can do in terms of how you're buying the channel. And we work with like a wide range of brands in terms of size. We work with a lot of Fortune, 500 companies. And then we work with like these kind of smaller, more nimble D2C teams. And so with the smaller teams who are like really kind of pride themselves on media buying, this isn't as big of an issue. But like sometimes when we're auditing accounts, we'll see that like 60 or 70% of the account is retargeting. Like that's very low hanging fruit.
And maybe somebody didn't know that. Maybe they were just doing it.
We audited an account the other day, and their DemandGen campaign was delivering like primarily to Gmail placements, which I hadn't seen before.
Traffic composition. That's why we almost always turn off Gmail and DemandGen. It can work for remarketing, but not as much for prospecting. Yeah.
So they thought YouTube wasn't working. And then we went in and audited it, and it's like, you weren't buying YouTube, you were buying Gmail.
Gmail's not working.
I just didn't even know there was like that much scale on Gmail. So that was a learning for me. So like the account structure, depending on the team and like how much they really how much time they spend in the ad account, like can really make a big difference. I'd say that, one thing on Meta is like the conversion optimization we talked about can kind of get you stuck in a bottom of the funnel hole where you're not like prospecting to new users. So the teams that we work with are doing a lot to kind of like figure out what is the right event to point Meta toward to get these like net new customers and introduce our brand to new people. On YouTube, I think it's probably it's probably playing with these different campaign types and settings and the types of placements that you're buying inside of YouTube. And of course, spend level is huge as well in terms of figuring out like where you sit on the point of diminishing returns.
Totally. Yeah, all those things are huge. And we've seen this play out now with test results were good and then maybe follow-up tests that weren't so good. It almost always ties back to a big creative shift, either just new creatives or creatives focusing on a different product. Maybe a brand was focusing on their hero product initially, then they moved to some secondary products and it did not work as well. And so, totally agree. And then that traffic composition piece is so important. Yeah, if you're running YouTube, run YouTube. Don't like look at Gmail and some of those things with it. And so we are officially out of time, but I do want to hear from you because a lot of people ask me about, hey, should I use Haus? Is it time for me to use Haus? Am I too small to use Haus? You guys are releasing a new level of service, correct? That's more widely applicable to D2C and other brands. Can you talk about that quickly?
I can, yeah. It's on our site now, live. So if you go to our pricing page, it's called DTC Basics, and this is because we want more companies to be able to access Haus. We've heard that it can be expensive relative to other SaaS tools. And so this is a lower cost, lighter service starter tier where you can measure DTC and Amazon across your core ad channels, the ones we're plugged into, and you can really get your feet wet here. So there's, you can see like a really nice side-by-side comparison in terms of what it includes and what it doesn't. But we just want this, if our mission is to make incrementality testing more accessible and to really democratize it, then I think this is a first step toward that.
It's a huge step. I've been waiting for it. You talked about it on the Andrew Ferris podcast. It's finally here. I'm so excited. So I'm recommending this a lot, talking about this a lot. And so, Olivia, this was super fun. This time went by so fast. Like I really wanted to nerd out on more.
I know.
So we'll have to do a follow-up, but yeah.
Pencil me in for a part 2. Maybe when we have our next YouTube report, I can come share it with you.
Yes, next YouTube report. All right, we're penciling it in. We're planning on it. Next YouTube report, we're gonna talk about that here. So super excited. Olivia, you're also an amazing follow online. So X and I believe LinkedIn as well. Where can people find you?
On X and LinkedIn, Olivia Kory.
Awesome. All right, Olivia, thank you so much. This was super, super fun.
Thanks, Brett.
Awesome. As always, thank you for tuning in. We'd love to hear from you. If you found this show to be helpful, please share it with someone else. With that, until next time, thank you for listening. Hey, as we wrap up this week's episode, I want to mention, if you're a great brand, if you're scaling high 7, 8, 9 figures in D2C or omnichannel, we should potentially talk. We've worked with some of your favorite brands, and we'd love to consider working with you as well. We are masters at unlocking new channels like YouTube, unlocking new scale on platforms like Amazon, where we can add up to 8 figures in new growth. And we've got multiple ways we can work with you. So we can do the full service thing and work like a partner with your team and really run everything. Or we can offer consulting. So maybe you've got an internal team that really knows their stuff, but there's an area they don't know really well and they'd like to get some consulting. We can do that. We also have tons of free guides, free resources, free materials you can check out. All of that, get started at omgcommerce.com. And we can't wait to help you scale profitably.